China Current is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Current, your weekly news report on what's happening in China. I'm Lisa. In this episode, the results of the US 2024 election pleases China. US sanctions against China's largest chip supplier failed. Russia defeated the EU during the 7th China International Import Expo. First, let's look at why Beijing is cheering up for Trump's victory. On the 6th of November 2024, Donald Trump once again won the US presidential election. Throughout his campaign, tariffs remain a central theme in his approach to China, including his stark warning, "If you go into Taiwan, I'm sorry to do this, I'm going to tax you at 150% to 200%. In response, Chinese strategic professor Wang Xiangsui dismissed Trump's threat as ineffective and even advantageous for China. According to Wang, Trump's stance reveals two key points. First, it highlights that Trump may be a more predictable and manageable leader for China than Biden. Trump's approach reflects a business-centric mindset, where he views economic pressure as the ultimate and sole solution to all issues. If a 100% tariff hike doesn't work, his strategy suggests simply raising it to 200%, 300%, and so on until he achieved the desired outcome. However, for China in 2024, such tactics are not fundamentally threatening. It is because China effectively counters similar pressure during the previous trade war, employing two key strategies that could be replicated and even expanded. The first is to impose tariff on US products of equal value. If the US places tariff on $500 billion worth of Chinese imports, China will respond with tariff on $500 billion worth of US exports, ensuring both sides share the same economic burden. The second strategy involves proportional tariffs, where US tariffs on Chinese goods exceeds China's imports from the US. China responds by increasing tariff on the remaining US imports in proportion to the trade deficit. For instance, if the US imposes tariff on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, but China only imports $150 billion in US products annually, China could levy an additional 40% tariff on existing US imports. This tactic ensures that if Trump attempts to leverage the smaller US market size to pressure China, American companies will face increasingly severe retaliation. Moreover, as the US industrial supply chain relies heavily on China, Beijing has identified strategic ways to leverage this dependency. Take rare earths, for example. According to Reuters, China holds at least 85% of the global rare earth mining and processing capacity as of 2023. These rare earth elements, a group of lanthanide metals, are essential in manufacturing critical components for aerospace, lasers, and permanent magnets. Without China's supply, the high-tech weaponry the US depends on would face serious shortages. Gallium is another crucial material in this equation. According to Sky News, the US Geological Survey reports that China controls 98% of global gallium production, securing a near monopoly. Gallium is vital for semiconductor manufacturing, especially in radar systems. On the 1st of August 2023, that is China's Army Day, China announced export controls on gallium, which severely impacted US defense sector. These moves directly caused delays in the supply of gallium-dependent components for the US F-35 Stealth fighter and F/A-18EF carrier-based fighters. Thus, it is clear that China has numerous countermeasures in trade disputes and even holds critical leverage over Trump's tariff threats, which lacks any real deterrence. If Trump continues to view tariff as a means to control China, he will likely become even more predictable and easier for China to manage compared to Biden. Secondly, this also suggests that compared to Biden, Trump has a more realistic sense of the limits of American power. Trump's comments effectively marks the first time a US president has openly implied that the US would not pursue military intervention in Taiwan's reunification, relying instead on the big stick of tariffs. compared to the Biden administration, which has reportedly considering plans for bombing Chinese coastal cities or imposing naval blockades. Trump's stance appears far less aggressive. A report by McKinsey showed that as of 2023, China now leads global industrial production, accounting for 34% of the world's manufacturing output. In comparison, data of the UK Centre for Economic Policy Research indicates that the US share was only 15.9% in the same year, less than half of China's output. Yet it continues to engage with China as if it still will the economic and military dominance it held during the World War II and the Cold War, a strategy that is increasingly unlikely to succeed. Even a more aggressive administration like Biden proposed military intervention, its deterrent effect would be limited. Trump's stance reflects an acknowledgement of America's current capacities. As a businessman, he seems averse to war, especially one over Taiwan, knowing that military intervention in China's Taiwan affairs would likely fail. Compared to being the world police ready to conduct carpet bombing on the other side of the world, he is just someone looking for excuses to coerce protection fees and fines, more like a parking agent. The conflict in Ukraine illustrates this point further. The US and its allies have imposed over 16,000 sanctions on Russia, yet Russia's military and civilian sector continue to function. European nations, meanwhile, find themselves paying more for Russian oil and gas. Therefore, when the Chinese hear Trump's remarks on the Taiwan issue, they're less likely to feel threatened. For them, reunification is a matter of China's internal affairs, and the US should simply mind its own business. Moving on, the US sanction to suppress China's chip industry also declared a failure. On the 7th of November, China's top chip foundry, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, posted record revenue despite a US sanction warning. Due to the strong domestic demand for legacy chip, its third quarter revenue hit a record high of $2.17 billion, which rose 34% from a year earlier. Meanwhile, fueled by robust demand from Chinese smartphone makers, chip designer Qualcomm raised its quarterly sales and profit outlook, surpassing Wall Street expectations and pushing its share up by 8.5% in extended trading on the 6th of November. However, just a day before, on the 5th of November, according to the Wall Street Journal, the US government issued a directive requiring American semiconductor firms to remove Chinese companies from their supply chain. This move introduces potential disruptions for US firms in the Chinese market and adds uncertainties to the global semiconductor landscape. This mandate could lead to rising costs, as US companies may face higher prices, longer timelines, and increased research and development costs when seeking replacement. The journal also reports that major chip equipment suppliers such as Applied Materials and Lam Research are notifying their vendors to source alternatives for certain components currently sourced from China or losing their supplier status. Additionally, suppliers are being asked to ensure that they have no Chinese investors or shareholders. Industry executives warn that this policy could drive up costs, as finding non-Chinese components at comparable price is challenging. This policy is proving to be a double-edged sword. Chinese suppliers like Shenyang Fortune Precision Equipment are affected, with their growth constrained despite having facilities in Singapore due to a licensing issue tied to their Chinese headquarters. To mitigate the impact, Chinese companies are exploring options such as setting up holding companies in Singapore or forming joint ventures with Malaysian firms to produce locally and circumvent restrictions. At this year's China International Import Expo, numerous global high-tech leaders showcased cutting-edge innovations, underlying their commitment to the Chinese market. U.S. industry giants like Synopsys, SK Hynix made notable appearances, signaling their continued confidence in China. While US policies are adding pressure on Chinese companies within the global semiconductor supply chain, they are also accelerating China's drive for self-reliance and technological breakthroughs. Through domestic innovations and international partnership, Chinese industries are navigating external challenges and exploring new growth opportunities on the world stage. In addition to the subtle attitude of US tech companies towards their president's China policy, there are also some changes related to Russian companies as CIIE. This year's Expo has drawn nearly 3,500 exhibitors from more than 150 countries and regions, including major global firms like Volkswagen, FedEx, and L'Oreal. According to the South China Morning Post, last year, Chinese companies signed deals worth $78.4 billion with international expeditions at the Expo, an increase of 6.7% from a year earlier. Some in China have noted that Russia has seen a growing presence at the CIIE. According to Sputnik, 97 Russian companies are participating in this year's Expo, offering a diverse range of products, from candies, chocolates, and butter to beverages, cosmetics, medical supplies, and souvenirs. Chief Executive of the Russian Expo Center, Veronika Nikishina, highlights growing interest from both Russian and Chinese companies, emphasizing that Russia is confident in its product quality. She noted that in 2020, only 29 Russian companies participated in the CIIE. That number grew to 64 last year, and this year, 97 companies are taking part. Last month, Sputnik reported that data from the Russian Ministry of Agriculture showed Russia has surpassed Italy and Belgium in chocolate export to China, maintaining its leading position since 2021. According to Chinese customs, Russia exported 11,200 tons of chocolate, worth of $31.8 million to China in the first 3 quarters of 2024, a 40% year-on-year increase. Notably, Russian candy company United Confectioners has become a regular participant at the CIIE, with its Alyonka chocolate proving to be a hit in China. According to Chinese state media, China is now the second largest importer of United Confectioners products. Interestingly, Alyonka chocolate was first introduced in the Soviet Union in 1946. Nearly 80 years later, it remains a symbol of the enduring friendship between the two countries. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Current. If you have any thoughts or comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. We look forward to hearing from you and see you next time.